Like and subscribe for endless entertainment. Our story starts off with Mitsuki being kidnapped into a new world and sees the king staring at him. He realized what's happened and begins rejoicing that he can start over his life without the people who bullied him, but the old lady discovers that his power is null, so they throw their one-star summon onto the streets to fend for himself. Mitsuki finds a hobo bridge and hides under it while slowly losing HP until Mino comes over to scare him halfway up to heaven. She notices that he's from another world based on his clothes, then offers to help him since she is a priestess of a church that takes care of lost ones as their primary duty. He asks her for some money, but she reveals that her branch is also broke and can only give him a place to rest. Mino takes the lost one towards the city while Mitsuki questions her about his new environment and wonders what he can do to help. But she explains that for many years people from Japan has been summoned to their world, so a lot of their knowledge and culture has already been ingrained into this land. Mino asks him how he got here, and after he tells his story she realizes that it must have been the king. Then reveals that this world is made up of 3 classes that are the commoners at the bottom. The nobles like the king in the middle, and at the top are the church that are responsible for punishing nobles that break their laws. Mitsuki realizes that since Mino's busy helping hobos like him, she must be at the bottom of the first class, and she threatens to leave him in the streets. But Mitsuki admits that he is also at the bottom since they told him that his power is null, unlike the girl he saw that was overflowing with magic. Mino reports that there's another lost one to her partner who goes to investigate this issue while she continues her journey with Mitsuki. The best girl tells him that there has never been a summoned person without a pure concept ability, so he must have one inside him as they finally arrive at the totally not suspicious church. They go inside where Mitsuki sees that it's abandoned, so Mino says that her sect doesn't have enough money to maintain it, but wonders if the power he possesses may help them. Mitsuki isn't sure about what to do until she gives him a little encouragement, then instructs him on how to activate his dormant power, which allows him to go into a deep trance to gain access to his pure concept, and he uses the null ability to erase a statue from existence. Mitsuki is surprised that he can use magic and decides that anyone that tries to get in his way will be destroyed, but when he turns around, Mino gives him an immediate brain surgery to bring an end to his subscription to life. However, his loot box suddenly begins glowing, and as his last act, Mitsuki attempts to give her a one-way ticket on the Heaven Express. Mino walks over to the expired human and tells him that even though he did nothing to deserve this, there has been too many lost ones who have brought nothing but disasters to this world. So her job as a priestess is to guide these lost souls to the hands of the Lord before they destroy everything. Our executioner reports to the archbishop that there is another summoned one in the king's castle that must be taken out, and the old lady encourages her to take a break after this mission is done. Mino remembers that years ago she was the only survivor in a city that was destroyed after a lost one went out of control. But before she becomes a victim, someone penetrated the mutant from behind to make her past tense. Flare comes out of her camo to retrieve her weapon from the loot box, but sees that it's beginning to glow and gently moves the child out of the way. The lost one begins absorbing all the white powder around her to create a mech suit to fight against the priestess, but the monster gets easily disarmed by Flare before a church is suddenly conjured around the beast that instantly breaks it apart to bring the battle to an end. Then Orwell walks into the destroyed city so she can look for more survivors and tells Flare to look after Mino in the meantime. In the present, our assassin sees that Momo has arrived at the church, and she goes to place her head into our waifu's stress relievers before getting on her knees to have a view of paradise, but Mino knocks the horny out of her body. Momo reports that she has discovered the other lost one's location in the castle and gives her the uniform that the royal maids wear. But 5 men suspiciously arrive at the church, and the 2 priestesses decides to deliver them to the hands of the Lord. Mino steps outside to confront the soldiers that are unaware of the ass beating they're about to receive and scolds them for summoning 2 innocent people in an attempt to overthrow the church. The battle begins with Mino charging forward and giving her first victim a new breathing hole before offering another a free dental service. The leader tells his ally to call for help, so Momo goes to hunt him down while the knight uses flamethrower on Mino, but she uses Protect to effortlessly block the attack. Our waifu begins walking towards her opponents and conjures the holy bell to destroy one of the men, while the other chooses to charge at Mino to become a hashtag directly by her hands. Mino runs towards the city and decides to end her mission tonight. She sneaks into the castle and begins scouting out the area while disguised as a royal maid. Our waifu sees the Lost One's room and throws a grapple over so she can Batman her way across, but finds herself face to face with the target. Minot goes over to Akari and takes her inside to say that she has come to rescue her and explains that a boy that was summoned ran away from the nobles to seek refuge at the church. However, upon arriving he got critically injured but tasked them to rescue her from danger before he passed away. Akari decides to go with our friendly neighborhood executioner and they begin running through the hall of the castle until Minot decides to turn a corner and disappears from Akari's line of sight. She does an air takedown to send the poor girl to the Shadow Realm, then backs away from her loot box. Minot notices that her body has begun to glow as Akari's pure concept of time activates and allows her to self-revive. She gets up off the floor to the executioner's shock, but she isn't aware that Minot failed to make her a hashtag. She tells Momo to cause a distraction to lure away the guards so they can escape through the unwatched door. Then Minot takes Akari's hand and the two of them goes to test fall damage, but Minot holds her in the waifu position while they fall. At the church, our MC reports that she can't find a way to eliminate her target, so Orwell reveals that the longer Akari uses her pure concept, the more it will eat at her mind until she becomes crazy, and tells the priestess to return to their capital within 3 days where they can perform a ceremony to make the Lost One past tense. Minot goes over to Akari to wake her up to come and eat the delicious food she made, before informing her that their enemies from the castle are still after them, so they must make their way to the church's capital where they can perform a special ritual to send her back home. Akari have doubts about going back to her world and explains that she felt true happiness for the first time when they met at the castle. So our executioner tells her that they can remain together until the day of her ritual. While Momo sits outside listening to her girl getting taken, the cuck Loli reports that the king have been arrested for his crimes against the church and gives her Dom the train tickets she bought for them, but there is one extra for herself because she doesn't trust her queen with Rizgat Akari. And after hearing Momo's insistence, Minot decides to allow her to come with the condition that she must remain out of sight. At the train station, we find Akari being amazed by its architectural beauty, and Minot explains that the trains in this world runs on aether, which is generated by the souls of people and can also be found in large amounts in natural areas. However, it also acts as mana for magic, but only naturally talented people are able to wield it. Our favorite psychopath decides to go get some food, then leaves Akari to wait in a corner, but she notices a lost girl who introduces herself to the floor, so she goes over to help the little one by healing her with magic. Minot buys some food from the stall and sees that the royal guards are looking for someone, but notices that Akari is using her powers in public. 100 IQ Minot uses a crest to cast the bubble spell to distract everybody and goes over to deliver common sense straight into Akari's brain. The little one compliments her for making the bubbles, and she shows off by moving them around before they return the lost child to her guardian. The king's daughter arrives at the train station and her guards reveal that they've been looking for her to question why she's leaving while her father is on trial. But Ashina says that he can take care of himself before heading off to board the train heading to the church's capital. On the train, Ashina sits while pondering her father's stupidity, but a group of men suddenly comes in to confront the princess. Another group goes over to our party's cart, but one comes over and realizes that Minot is a priestess, so he tells her to put the scripture on the floor and to take off her clothes to reveal any hidden weapon. Before she can act, Akari interrupts them to declare that she will undress herself instead and begins releasing heaven, but Minot blocks us and shows the criminal the words of the Lord, then pimp slaps the other tourist of terror. Our executioner tells Akari that she doesn't need her protection but thanks her for the attempt anyways and begins going to the other carts to help the passengers. Meanwhile, Momo feeds the criminals a knuckle sandwich and asks why they're here, but he foolishly refuses to tell her until the little maniac takes out a very comfortable necklace and kindly offers to put it on for him. She reports that the criminals are here to kidnap the princess to exchange her for their captured leader, and Momo decides to take out the ones in the engine room. She goes on top of the train but finds a body flying past as our little monster comes face to face with Ashina. Momo tells her that she's a priestess that came to help, but the princess starts attacking her, then questions what happened to the two lost ones that her father summoned and wonders if she's one of the legendary executioners within the church. Momo says that's just a myth, but Ashina doesn't believe her and uses flamethrower in an attempt to disintegrate the loli. However, our little maniac manages to block it. Momo uses magic on her chain to turn it into a body divider to fight against the princess. while Minot made her way to the engine room where they reveal that Ashina already took out all the criminals before she went to the top. She asks the tourist of terror why they're glowing, and he confesses that this is the last trip for everyone on the train before they experience a very painless unaliving by becoming tasty meatballs. All the crystals begins converging in front of our MC, so Minot tells the conductors to leave while she handles everything else. The floating blood balls uses polymerization to fuse together in order to bring forth the monthly Rage Night, and the battle begins with the monster using hormonal rush, but Minot easily deflects all its attack. She hears Momo fighting directly above her, and we see that our little psychopath is still fighting evenly with the princess. She throws a boomerang that Ashina easily dodged, so it flies into the forest, but many branches comes back to distract the princess from her fight and allows Momo to kick her off the train, but Ashina decides to take the loli with her. The boomerang comes back to enter the train to cut deep into the Night of Cramps, but it continues attacking our waifu until it lands a blow on the train's control valve, and Minot takes the chance to introduce it to the floor. She realizes that the train is now out of control and can crash at any moment, but time briefly rewinds throughout the world for a few seconds, but no one seems to remember what just happened. Akari enters the room, so Minot goes over to her and uses a spell to give the knight a blowjob. She scolds Ms. Double D's for putting herself in danger, but Akari confesses that she was just worried about her. The knight gets back up to continue the fight against the waifus, so Minot decides to use her Hole Maker to penetrate her opponent's body in an attempt to bust all her mana inside the creature. But the heavy flow fights back to cause a Ki Blast power struggle, which forces our waifu to use the scriptures to push her mana deep inside it and force the knight to delete itself from this world. Akari congratulates her on winning, but Minot knows that the train is still out of control but realizes that she doesn't have enough mana to do anything. Our executioner sees the walking power bank right beside her, and they go on top of the train where she reveals to Akari that she's going to plug into her mana port to cast a spell that will save everyone's life. The women begins touching each other as Minot conjures a gate that makes a net to surround the train. Then she begins taking power from Akari, which surprises her because it's a lot larger than she ever expected. Our MC uses all the mana she has gained to slow down the vehicle as much as possible until it stops just before the trains can get a love tap. Everyone begins exiting at the station, but Minot has a faint memory that she passed away while failing to stop the destruction from happening. So Akari was forced to use her powers to reverse the flow of time to save all their lives. Our party boards another train, and Minot confirms with Momo that something strange happened during their battle, so our MC decides to stop Akari from using her abilities until her execution, or they'll risk unleashing another calamity on the world like when she was a child. After Orwell tells Flair to take care of Minot, she goes over to the girl and notices that the orphan has the potential to become a powerful priestess, but she decides to leave some money behind and begins walking away. Having nowhere to call home, Minot decides to start following the path of her savior, and on their journey the girl saw the priestess guide many lost ones to the gates of heaven. They arrive at the continent of Salt, where Flair explains that it once was the home of an entire civilization until an otherworlder went out of control, which resulted in everything on this land being turned into salt. She uses this as an example to show that what happened to her home is insignificant to the disasters the lost ones are truly capable of. And Minot decides that she wants to be an executioner to prevent something like this from ever happening again. At the sanctuary, our little monster learns about everything essential in this world. Flair explains that in the past their people once reigned over the entire world with help from the lost ones until their pure concepts began evolving to cause disastrous calamities that ended many lives, and since they can't send them back home, the travelers must be eliminated at all cost. The children began being taught the best ways to destroy someone's mortal vessel, but the girls seems to be traumatized by what they're learning to do. Minot goes over to Flair to report that none of the girls have the will to unalive people, so she will make up for them by executing more lost ones than anyone else. Flair begins laughing and reminds our little psychopath that she is below average in both mana capacity and physical ability, while only having average mental ability, with her only advantage being pretty privilege, but Minot insists that one day she will be as powerful as her. So Flair decides to make the little monster her successor and starts teaching our MC everything she knows. Minot awakens on the train but sees Akari also leaving sleep mode, and they realize that they're close to the capital. Our party leaves the train station and Akari wants her queen to show her around the city, so Minot promises to take her on a date after they visit the cathedral. They go inside the building where Orwell comes out to meet with the young ladies and tells Akari that her going home ritual will be completed in 2 days. Then asks Minot to investigate some young women who have recently gone missing within the city. At the hotel, Ms. Melanchest seems to be in a very bad mood, and when Minot goes to check on her, she explains that even though she promised to go on a date with her tomorrow, she still accepted another mission. But before Minot can speak, Akari storms off to take a bath. Our assassin calls over her side piece to hand over the task to investigate the disappearances so she can have time to bring out the main chick, and the cuck Loli decides to do it as a favor. Minot goes back inside where she finds Akari coming out in her towel to apologize for how she behaved earlier, but Minot tells her that she will take her on a date, and Akari embraces her so hard that her towel just happened to fall off. The next day, the young couple goes into town to enjoy all the beautiful scenery they can find while rejoicing in each other's company until night falls to bring their adventure to an end. Akari decides that she's gonna go have a bath, so Minot takes the chance to go outside and listen to Momo's report. She tells our waifu that all the missing women disappeared near the former royal palace, so the nobles may be involved, but she needs to investigate further to be sure. On the day of the ritual, the two women walks through the town for the last time, but Akari sees a cosmetic stall in the streets and Minot decides to buy something for her side piece, which makes the waifu mad since this is their final day together. So our assassin takes her headband to make a flower on top of it and place the gift in her hair. Our party goes to the church and meets up with the archbishop to perform the going away ritual. Orwell leads the girls into her secret room that has a kinky chair in the center and tells Akari to go sit in it. However, she hesitates for a moment, but with some support from Minot, our favorite Double D's decides to go into the sub-chair and waits for them to send her home. We go over to Momo, who has just found a secret passage inside the noble's palace and begins exploring the area until she encounters Ashina traveling the same route. Momo tells her that she's on an errand from the church, and the princess explains that she sneaked into this place because all the knights were trying to hide it from her. They arrive at the room that the nobles used to summon the other worlders, and Momo wonders how they created it since only the church possesses that knowledge. Ashina points out that someone very high up within the church must be working with the nobles since there is no other way for them to get that information, so Momo contacts Minot to tell her that the old bitch is a traitor. Orwell sees that she's been found out and decides to send RMC to the Lord, but Minot gains distance to bring forth the holy bells upon the archbishop, which forces her to use pride magic to defeat the holy spells before she begins pewing Minot with happiness to destroy her scriptures. However, in the last moment, Minot decides to show her the light as she falls into the abyss. Momo hears the explosion and tries to go to her queen, but the discharged dragon and a demon comes to oppose the two ladies. Minot gets up at the bottom of the hole to find the missing women laying on a bed without makeup while feeding their fluids into a beaker. The archbishop begins making her way down to the floor, and Minot asks why she would betray them since she lived her whole life saving people. The overripe human creates a barrier around the cathedral and explains that she wasted her entire existence helping others, but now she has the option to use Akari's pure concept to regain her youth. And the other priestess restrains Melanchest while kindly asking her to stop fighting back so they can begin the ritual. Minot tells the old woman that even though she's powerful, no one can control a pure concept, but the archbishop reveals that the ceremony is really a way to erase a person's mind and soul, which leaves only their power behind to use as they wish. Then informs our waifu that they also plan to use her ability to absorb mana as a catalyst to control the pure concept, and starts manipulating the fluids from the young women to summon the Angel of Cramps to face off against our executioner. Minot sentences the out-of-date human to heaven and begins fighting with the red monster, while Orwell reveals that for the past 10 years she's been experimenting with pure concepts, but on one occasion she accidentally erased a part of the power, and this resulted in Minot's town being wiped out with the only one suspecting her being Flare. On the other battlefield, we find Ashina struggling to slay the Glizzy demon, but Momo also has no luck against the Red Eyes dragon. We go up to Akari to see that the ceremony is almost completed, and fearing that she will lose all her recollections of Minot, the mega simp goes deep within her mind to unlock the memories she sealed away. And Akari, that has mastered her powers through living hundreds of lives, awaken and realizes that in this timeline she managed to get a present from her queen. The priestess foolishly threatened to hurt her, so the goddess uses her ability to freeze everyone in the room and confesses that Minot is the only one she'll allow to end her, before fast-forwarding them to the end of their existence. Awakened Akari attempts to stop the pure concept of white, but admits that she's never been able to affect it and decides that all she needs to do to help Minot is to make Momo go berserk. Seeing that her job is done, the most broken character chooses to suppress her memories from her past regressions while leaving the love she feels for Minot intact. We go back to our supporting cast, where Momo easily blocks the flamethrower from Charizard, but the ribbons Minot gave her suddenly disintegrates, and while she's panicking, the monster tackles her into the wall. Our little monster blasts away the oversized lizard and begins having a mental breakdown from the great loss she suffered. The dragon stands once more so Momo can show it exactly why her hands are rated E for everything. But she decides to go one step further and dives into the earth itself to absorb all the mana she can hold to use explosion, and destroys everything unfortunate enough to be anywhere near her. Ashina surprisingly survives the friendly fire and decides to stop holding back against the unfortunately shaped demon. She creates a lightsaber from her sword, and with one swing the princess gives the creature a one-way ticket to Glizzy Heaven. Meanwhile, our little monster begins manipulating the loot box to transform it into a giant vortex of black force energy, which she uses to drop a nuke on the cathedral. Orwell realizes that the barrier is broken and Minot is about to praise her side piece until the main chick arrives to make sure she's okay. Our priestess begins arguing with Akari for putting herself in danger, while the old woman questions how she managed to escape. The ceiling collapses as the prison sentence arrives on the battlefield, but remembering her promise to stay hidden, she delivers a vicious uppercut to the angel to allow Minot to 1v1 the archbishop. RMC decides to take Akari's power in an attempt to blow Orwell's mind, but in the last moment the cathedral's shield protected her and she decides to show Minot the true power of pride. Seeing no other option, the executioner decides to use her forbidden technique to borrow the Lost One's pure concept and dives deep within Akari's consciousness, where she finds herself in a pool of regret that attempts to overwhelm her. But right as Minot reaches the peak of despair, awakened Akari comes in to promise her that she will always be her best friend throughout all of time and grants RMC full access to her pure concept of time. Orwell starts a Ki Blast power struggle, but her old ass is easily defeated by the power of friendship, and in her last moments she questions why someone like her, who helped countless people throughout her life, failed while Minot succeeded. So RMC tells her that it's just a skill issue as the Archbishop ascends to heaven. Up above we find that Momo defeated the angel, but it wiped out all her strength, while Ashina decides to leave the battlefield behind. They report to the public that a dragon and demon suddenly attacked from underground, so Ashina with the aid of a priestess defeated them, but during the battle Orwell unfortunately lost her life. Later on, Momo apologizes to Minot for losing the ribbons she gave her, so RMC gifts her side piece scrunchies as a replacement, and the head of the Itty Bitty Titty Committee confesses that she loves Minot more than anyone else. Our executioner reveals that during the fight she met awakened Akari, then theorizes that Melon Chest regressed from far in the future but somehow lost her memories along the way, and decides that she won't leave Akari alone until they find a way to end her. The Lost One awakens from a nightmare and sees Minot by her side, so she goes over to embrace her queen. But it's revealed that Akari regained the memory of the first time Minot confessed that she is an executioner, and admits that she can't bring herself to harm her friends as she crumbles away into nothingness. Then Flare walks up from behind while holding the pure concept of salt and prepares to end Akari, but in that moment she decides to regress the world to give Minot another chance to end her. The next day, our party decides to leave the capital behind to head to the sanctuary, where Minot says that there's an organization that takes in lost ones to keep them safe. And the two women begin their adventure along the comforts of the road until they arrive at their first stop along their journey. Minot has a flashback of her travels with Flare, where she explains that the fog in the ocean is a calamity called pandemonium that traps anything foolish enough to enter. She begins walking into the port city and heads over to the church so she can request traveling funds for their journey. But after they leave, a priestess ominously looks down while naming Minot as Flare's successor. The two waifus go to have a bath together, where Akari wonders if instead of going to the sanctuary to hand her over, they could continue traveling around the world with each other, but Minot sidesteps the question and leaves Ms. Double D's in the bath by herself. Inside the locker room, Momo comes out of hiding and goes over to grab a hold of her precious, while Minot praises her for making it here through the dangerous roads. Momo reveals that during her journey she kicked Ashina into a temple filled with many dangerous beasts and locked her inside so they can eat her out. But she warns her queen against staying in the city for too long because the fourth class who once tried to fight against all other classes originated here, so they may have a grudge against her since Flare was the one who defeated their leader. They hear Akari coming from the bath, but before she leaves, Momo wonders if they can use the pandemonium to just get rid of her, and Minnow decides that it's worth a try. The next day, our party begins exploring their new environment where Akari sees a castle in the distance and Minnow explains that it's off limits because it's private property, but they can have a closer look from the boat. The two women travels towards the castle, but Minnow advises Akari to take some pills so she doesn't get seasickness. And as they get closer, our MC explains that the count of this fortress has fallen ill, so now all the responsibilities are passed down to his daughter. Inside the castle, we find the Count's daughter hosting a meeting with all the leaders of the fourth class. They discuss the presence of Flare's successor within their town, and Manon tells them to just watch what she does for now. But the nobles believes she's underestimating Minnow until Manon reminds them that she saw when Flare sent her mother to heaven. The nobles decides to launch an attack against their enemy, so Manon brings the meeting to an end and tells them to enjoy the sandwiches that she made. The Count's daughter travels deep within the castle and grabs a little one that she leads towards a Swiss cheese maker, then invites her inside so she can receive a hug from the gates of hell. We go back to our party where we find that Akari has been Bill Cosby'd. Minnow puts her on a boat, which the ocean currents carries inside the pandemonium, but while the waifu is floating helplessly in the fog, her powers activate and brings forth awakened Akari into this world. She sees that everything is still happening as it should when a giant monster suddenly comes to confront the goddess, but awakened Akari decides that she's not gonna get eaten in this timeline. A light starts coming from above that she has never seen before as the monster gives her some head. But our queen uses her ability to resurrect inside of the boat with no memories of what happened after looking at the castle. So Minnow gaslights her into believing that she just fell asleep and decides to return to the port city. Our party arrives at the dock being unaware that members of the fourth class are watching them from afar, and heads to the marketplace to continue their sightseeing in the port city. Akari offers Minnow a melon, but she uses full counter to deep-throat our waifu and makes her climax from a foodgasm while noticing that some men have been covertly following them. He suddenly turns around to use flamethrower, but Minnow uses Protect to block it before giving Akari her whole maker and going over to blow his back out. Another enemy holds the unkillable woman hostage and tells our executioner that they've been watching her since she beat his allies on the train. But Minnow activates her weapon's ability, then goes over to deliver a roundhouse kick that Chuck Norris would envy before gently restraining the foolish criminals. Manon watches from afar as her allies gets arrested, but she knows that they're gonna snitch and decides to transform them into monsters. While walking, Minnow hears screaming and returns to the crime scene where she finds that all her prisoners have all been slain. Our priestess goes to the church to report on what happened today, but Cecilia questions her on how she plans on smoking Akari and threatens to stop funding her journey unless she takes on a job to help their church in an investigation. She goes back to the hotel to tell Momo that their new mission is to look into a drug that's being sold throughout the town. In the morning, Minnow wakes up in a panic because Akari was trying to have her way with her body while she was sleeping, so our waifu goes over to finger her forehead. We go over to Manon's castle where the nobles are questioning her about the drug that they've been distributing and wonders why one of their own members were turned into a monster. She reveals to them that the sandwiches were made with some of the good stuff mixed in, and the woman scolds her for doing it before immediately realizing that she effed up. Manon uses the pill to monsterize the woman's arms so she can give herself a neck massage that's so good it's to die for, and asks if anyone else would like to oppose her. After proving that she's in charge, Manon reveals that she was given the drugs by someone to help get revenge on Minnow because of what Flare did to her mother, and kindly requests their full cooperation. While in the basement, it's shown what the special candy is being made from. We find Momo in the alleyway looking for information using the Batman method, but they explain that their leader prevented them from buying any drugs. Ashina arrives at the crime scene as the head of their gang, and Momo decides that it is on site with the princess, but after realizing that she can't smoke her, the two women goes to talk at the bar. They decide to exchange information, so Momo explains that 1,000 years ago a lost one came to this world with the power to make her fantasies become reality, but after she started creating monsters from her body, they were forced to seal her away inside the fog. After hearing this, Ashina reveals that the drugs are being produced by Manon, who also happens to be hosting a giant party tomorrow night. Momo reports all she found out to Minot, but our executioner says that she already got an invitation to the party from the church, then goes home to be attacked by Ms. Melanchest, who is throwing a tantrum because she doesn't get to go to the event. However, when she gets in the good girl position and started begging, Minot had to bring her along. On the night of the ball, we find our favorite stalker spying on Minot in her beautiful dress and begins reaching her peak until she notices that Akari is also attending the event as her queen's guest. Inside the ballroom, our two ladies are enjoying the party, but Minot notices that Manon is busy with the guests and decides that she should start her investigation. She goes outside to look for any proof that the drug production is being done inside the castle, but Ashina suddenly confronts our MC and questions why she's behaving so suspicious. Minot says she's simply a maid of Manon, but the princess has max-level intuition, so she asks to see her face, which causes Minot to do a racist, so Ashina draws her blade to prepare to fight our executioner. Ashina charges forward, so Minot slows her momentum to block the attack, but the princess uses Fire Blast and it gets blown back into her face. The princess continues her attack, but Minot unlocked Ultra Instincts to break her ankles until Ashina manages to disarm her. So our MC is forced to create bubbles as a distraction in an attempt to score a C-section on the princess. Ashina praises our MC for giving her a good fight and realizes that this may be Momo's master as she prepares to launch a flame attack, but Minot's blade appears at her feet to show her the light. Akari sees the explosion in the distance and begins worrying about Minot, which causes her memories to return. The queen realizes that everything in this timeline is different from what she is used to as Manon comes over to have a conversation for the first time in her hundreds of lives. She tells awakened Akari that her hair is the same color as her mom's and asks where she came from, but our goddess admits that she doesn't remember most of her memories of Japan. So Manon explains that it's caused by her overusing the pure concept for a long period of time before leaving awakened Akari behind to return to her party. Our time traveler realizes that if things continue like this, she will no longer hold the advantage of knowing the future and decides that she'll go to Manon to find out exactly why everything is changing. Meanwhile, Momo walks toward the guard and puts the poor bastard into sleep mode before she continues to the mansion to enter with style. Our little maniac kindly questions them about their jobs and asks the remaining victim to tell her everything about the drugs before she has to get more persuasive. After gaining the information, Momo finds herself in a basement that has an Iron Maiden in the center and sees that this is where the drugs are being produced. She opens the hug from hell and finds a little one severely injured inside who starts asking for her mother, but when Momo tries to free her, a trap activates that creates an explosion that launched a rod that penetrated her body. Momo walks along the halls but finds that she is getting very weak because the spikes were poisoned and calls for Minot as she goes unconscious. We find our MC looking for Akari, but she gets the message from Momo and goes to take her to the hospital. The best girl apologizes for being careless, but Minot praises her for being the greatest assistant she could ever hope to have. Cecilia tells her that the poison is under control and asks about Akari, but Minot says she's still missing, then asks the priestess to surround the castle with the help of the nobles so they can arrest all of the fourth class that's hiding there. Outside the fortress, we find the knights announcing that all the fourth are under arrest for distributing drugs, so Manon decides to go and speak with her council. She enters the room to see that everyone inside is frozen in time as awakened Akari comes out and questions how she's been changing this timeline. Manon reveals that she was told by Pandemonium that our goddess was rewinding this world endlessly and admits that her mother was also a lost one that came to this world, although she wasn't summoned like everyone else. So when the fourth class discovered the woman, her father decided to use her as a weapon against their enemies, but he fell in love and couldn't bring himself to do it because the price for using a pure concept is the user's memories. On one faithful day, Manon's mother reveals that she has an older sister right before Flare came by to give her a brand new hole. She tries to use her ability but notices that Manon is in the splash zone and decides to become a hashtag without putting up a fight. After this happened, Manon begs Flare to end her too since she's the child of a lost one, but the executioner reveals that the pure concept is connected to their souls so it cannot be passed down genetically, and leaves the child behind to mourn her parent. Manon says that from that moment she planned on becoming as forbidden as her mother and begins drawing an alchemy circle on the floor that allows her to exchange the lives of everyone who ate the drug to gain access to the pure concept of chaos. She attacks awakened Akari, but Minnow came in clutch to save her life and she begins crying because our MC saw her true personality. But Minnow says that questions can wait for later, so she should leave this island to be safe before going to face Manon alone. Inside the mansion, the two women comes face to face with each other, and seeing that Minnow is prepared to end her, Manon becomes overjoyed because that means she has finally become as taboo as her mother was. Manon uses her tentacles to try and penetrate Minnow, but her evasion stats are maxed out, so the villain tries an area of effect attack that begins destroying everything around them. The dust clouds clears with Minnow remaining untouched, but Manon suddenly gets penetrated by a hole maker as our queen comes out of stealth to disarm her opponent to bring an end to this fight. Manon confesses that this fate is much better than her ordinary life and tells Minnow that everyone can change the roles that they were given at any time before she decides to become the final sacrifice to the pure concept of chaos. Minnow gently places the young lady on the floor as she gets a reverse fisting and allows Pandemonium to use her body as a pathway to spawn into this world. The little one greets our assassin, so she gives her a bigger breathing hole, but Pandemonium uses her own loot box as a sacrifice so she can self-revive. Minnow says that she will destroy the pure concept, but the little demon begins laughing and explains that not even the Ivory Hero, who was the strongest pure concept to ever exist, was able to destroy her. Pandemonium begins to give herself a neck massage so comfortable that it blew her mind, and all the fluids released from her body transforms into monsters that mindlessly starts eating her out until she respawns into this world again to have a fight with our MC. Minnow begins fighting against the monsters, and Pandemonium confesses that she senses the Ivory Hero inside of her. Our executioner gives the demon's brain surgery to close the portal and takes the chance to allow her enemy to have an intimate moment with the floor. She realizes that another loli has appeared who goes over to give herself a neck massage before complimenting Minnow on winning the warm-up match. Our waifu realizes that Pandemonium used Manon to distribute the drugs so she can use people who consume them for extra lives. But the super loli explains that she also did all this for her entertainment because she loves seeing humans try their best to struggle and survive before they get fed to her monsters. Pandemonium uses Chimera Shadow Garden to summon many Shinigamis to the battlefield to attack our priestess, but she uses Protect in combination with the Holy Bells to destroy them. The Prison Charge decides to lend her Pokemon a hand so they can go through Mega Evolution and starts to break into our MC's safe space, which forces Minnow to summon the Gok Gok Gate to suck up all the monsters. Pandemonium realizes that she's very weak and creates a giant Fap Arm to use Gum Gum Pistol, but before she can end the series, Ashina comes in clutch to save her life. The princess reveals that many people in the city have started turning into smoothies, but Minnow explains that Pandemonium still has many more lives and makes a plan to defeat her. The two ladies enters the mansion to face the little calamity, and Ashina turns her blade into a lightsaber to penetrate deep inside Mommy Planet, which makes all the mana gush from the Hole of Glory. So Minnow can create a pathway into the sky to merge the mana of the earth and sky veins. Using all this power, our MC casts a domain expansion to trap Pandemonium inside and uses her sure hit effect to endlessly destroy the loli's body to seal her away for all of time. At the church, we find that awakened Akari is visiting Momo in her sick bed, where she admits that she never liked the loli because they love the same woman, but decides to heal her anyways and wishes her a quick recovery as she leaves. An explosion suddenly happens at the castle as the monster from the fog came out to play, so Ms. Melonchest decides to help out, but the walking prison charge says that she will remain put to entertain her. Our goddess finger bangs the little demon to freeze her in time, but some hands begins embracing Akari's breather until she manages to throw them back to their original owner. Our waifu questions if she can defeat the little monster, so Pandemonium shows that if they were to fight she wouldn't stand a chance and asks Akari to tell her about their homeland of Japan. But Ms. Double D says that she wants nothing to do with her old world since the little that she can remember is filled with sadness. Pandemonium decides that it doesn't matter and begins thanking Akari for allowing her to escape before explaining that every time she rewinded the planet the world bent a little bit until there was a hole in the fog that was big enough to fit her pinky fingers through. Our goddess realizes that she is the reason for all this destruction, but Pandemonium warns her against rewinding time because she is almost at the edge of insanity and any more would turn her into a calamity. However, Akari says that she doesn't care about her memories since Minnow will end her before she becomes like Pandemonium and finger bangs the loli to the end of existence. The best girl goes to have a seat but sees that our favorite cockroach is back for more. She reveals that Akari will never be able to save Minnow in any timeline because the people who are connected to the memories of the planet are not affected by her abilities, and they've been working to make sure she fails no matter what. After hearing this new revelation, Akari realizes that Flare is her enemy, and Pandemonium comes over to whisper that the reason why all the Lost Ones tried to destroy the world was to find a way to return to Japan. But our waifu says that she doesn't want to exist in a world without Minnow, so Pandemonium decides it's time for her to go and enjoy her newfound freedom. We go over to our main party where they are facing off against the Kraken, and Akari explains that they just have to wait until the fog seals the monster inside. Seeing that they figured out her weakness, Pandemonium tells them that the fog is also coming for her as well, since she only escaped temporarily with a little help from Akari's power, and decides to use all her remaining sacrifices to transform herself into a giant monster that's worthy of being our final boss. The creature begins attacking our party, so they start exploiting its weak spots to split it apart, but the monster just reforms afterwards. Pandemonium decides to use Slithereo tactics to trap our waifus, which forces Ashina to launch a powerful attack to blow her away. However, all the segmented pieces begins going into the city to attack innocent people. Minnow tells the princess to go help the town while she has a 1v1 with Pandemonium, and the creatures begin easily overwhelming our priestess. She does a Captain America with her hole maker but gets grabbed by the tentacles in the process and is swiftly introduced to the floor while losing her grimoire at the same time. Pandemonium also feeds Minnow's weapon to her Digimon to make our priestess defenseless, so she's forced to run away from the abominations that are chasing her. But Minnow gets caught, then the monsters attempt to gangbang her until Ashina breaks them apart by throwing over her sword and tells our MC that she can borrow it while she continues to fist all the creatures. Minnow begins using the sword to pew-pew as much of the monsters as possible, but she soon runs out of mana and begins to get overwhelmed by their endless attacks. Our priestess is at her limit, so Pandemonium decides to bring an end to the fight, but the world suddenly begins rewinding as our goddess arrives on the battlefield to help. She tells Minnow to connect to her mana port, and the two ladies runs off into the distance to hide from the monsters. Pandemonium finds our waifus, then uses all her remaining power to turn them into shish kebabs, but it's revealed that it was a genjutsu as the power couple appears in front of her. They begin putting all their power into the sword to unleash the full power of friendship upon Pandemonium. But after her defeat, awakened Akari stops time and seals her memories once again. On the battlefield, we find Ms. Melon chest passed out, but Minnow sees that Pandemonium is barely holding on to life and asks what she wished to accomplish by causing so much destruction. So the Calamity explains that since she's the pure concept of chaos, when fear is spread onto the planet she finds it entertaining, and leaves her with the advice that the Ivory Hero once wielded the Sword of Salt, so it contains the power to erase pure concepts. The next day, we find Minnow telling Momo all that's happened while she was sick and reveals her plan to journey to the continent of Salt to use the sword to take out Akari before she becomes a calamity like Pandemonium. Then she returns home and finds Akari waiting for her to return to her arms, and it's revealed that she doesn't remember anything that happened after Manon's party. Meanwhile, Momo spends the night in her room realizing that Minnow cannot bring herself to complete their mission, so she will have to do it instead. The next day, our party continues their journey towards the sanctuary and decides to take the first step with each other. But on the inside, we find awakened Akari begging for Minnow to end her before it's too late. We go over to the church where we see that Manon has been revived by Pandemonium, and it's revealed that she used all the loot boxes from the graveyard to build her body, including Mitsuki's. Manon wonders why she would do this, then realizes that the older sister her mother spoke of is Pandemonium, and they begin planning to spread even more destruction onto the planet together. We go over to Flare, who is happy about the events that took place and decides that it's time to go and end Minnow once again.
Like for a cat girl, subscribe for a waifu, and remember to stay swifty.